What's up, everybody? This is Cyrus, metaphysical researcher, author, and right now I want to talk about the topic of negative or dark astral dimensions. And before I go further, what is an astral dimension? Well, an astral dimension is really any solid, physical, real place that is created through the mind, which, believe it or not, includes where you are right now. So you could argue that where we are right now is an astral dimension. There's basically, in my view, mental spaces that are not shared by others or are purely non-physical in nature, and then there are astral spaces that are shared environments that take up geographic space, like in a universe. And that's kind of like we have these two different things working together, right? And so when we do astral projection, we are going into other realms that are real solid um, places, although they may be operating on a different dimension, a different wavelength. They may be less physical than this dimension, but they're still real places. And that's also where we go when we talk about life after death, which is other realms, other frequencies, wavelengths that are outside of the place that we're in right now. And our consciousness has the ability to go to those places. So, now getting back to the point, we're talking about negative astral locations. And a lot of people don't want to talk about this subject very much because, besides giving people the creeps, it's a bit of a taboo. So, in the like kind of the New Age field, it's heavily taught that it's all love and light and angels and flowers and fairies and pixies and whatnot. So the idea that there may be negative or dark dimensions kind of throws that whole thing into disarray. Now keep in mind that the demographic of people who buy books in the New Age aisle tend to be very specifically, usually middle-aged women, and very often it's kind of people recovering or former Christians, or people who are Christians who are kind of branching off a bit into spiritualistic territory. And marketers believe that the demographic of New Age books, they don't want to hear about anything negative, and so it kind of creates this belief system in people that the afterlife, the spirit world, the astral dimensions that we can go to, all of it is love and light, and nothing bad can exist. And I will also find people get defensive or even hostile when I bring up the topic that there are negative realms. But here is the issue, is that many people who do astral projection, including myself, have seen negative types of realms, what we call lower density, lower vibration places. Now it's still existent on the less physical astral types of domains outside of this realm, but they are existing on a more negative vibration. And this is a result of the inhabitants of the place having constructed or created or chosen to live, chosen to exist in places that matches how they think and how they operate. And unfortunately, there's a lot of negative entities on the other side, and they are attracted to the flip side. So, as above, so below. So we talk about all the love and light and gardens and meadows and Summerland and all that, but I would theorize that there is an equal amount of darkness, dismay, deserts, and places that are not so pleasant, especially to people who are squeamish. So these have been reported extensively for a long time. I remember first hearing about these negative realms when I was reading the book called Life in the World Unseen by Monsieur Hugh Benson, which was a channeled or mediumship created book about the literal conditions of the afterlife. And since then, many out-of-body explorers went on to be taken into these types of realms. Jürgen Ziwe, who I sometimes reference, has excellent descriptions of some of these types of places. And even like in pop culture or in more well-known afterlife books and resources, like the film What Dreams May Come, shows the protagonist going into a negative realm. There is the film No Solar, based on the Chico Xavier books, which was channeled or widely believed to be, have a credible background, and they describe these types of realms, right? So I also am aware of these types of realms, and I think it's kind of a fact. Like, you can't really get away from the fact that these types of places exist. And personally, I mean, I don't have an issue with it, and I think that the people who do have a big issue with this idea, and they say no, nothing negative can exist, everything has to be positive. The reason that they have an issue with it, the reason that they're scared of this being real, is because they themselves are not that secure with themselves. So they are worried that they may end up in a negative dark realm. And so they prefer to just believe that none of these types of things can exist, and that once we die, we immediately ascend and become heavenly, angelic entities, that we don't take any of our baggage with us. Well, almost any psychic who works with deceased people will tell you that we do take our baggage with us. In my own experience, what I understand about crossing over is that you may have like some heavy psychedelic experiences when you die, going toward the light, celestial, cosmic experiences, and things like that. But when all that stuff settles down and it's time to begin leading your life again, all your memories of your old life, it's all back, and you are who you were right before you died, and nothing really changes. So if somebody's a psychopath, murderer, rapist, killer, and whatnot, and then they kick the bucket, they're still going to be a psychopath, rapist, murderer, killer, and then they're going to gravitate into a realm that best suits them. Like, they're not even going to be able to stay around more heavenly, nicer types of places. Like, they're going to just automatically find themselves in an environment that is much more attuned to their psychological condition. And so they will find themselves, based on kind of cosmic law, being pushed down into a landscape, maybe like the one you see in this photo that I put as the background for this video. It's like a desert, a dark landscape, kind of a traditionally a hellish environment. And we could even argue that, like, Dante's Inferno and the books about hell could have been channeled. It could be real places. But none of it is something that anybody is condemned to be in forever. It's always some kind of this temporary thing, until somebody gets their act together, and then they get out of that situation. Now, I think there was another element to these negative realms as well to think about. Which is that, again, people who go on this pure positivity belief system, they don't want to recognize that humans, we have this creative shadow, right? So as I'm kind of an artist myself, and I really enjoy different concepts of places that, realms and stories and things like that, right? And there's this human creative dark side is attracted to, like, the landscape that I have on the screen right now. These places that are kind of dark and foreboding, right? So people don't enjoy the Lord of the Rings merely because of the descriptions of the Shire, with all the hobbits running around and eating cheese and drinking mead. People like the Lord of the Rings because it has a contrast between, like, the Shire and Mordor, which is a dark and foreboding desert with ebony towers and orcs and trolls and monsters and things like that. And it's so well written in the Lord of the Rings, the descriptions of these dark lands, that it captures people's imaginations. I always thought Mordor was interesting because it was, it's a dark and evil land, but maybe it wasn't always so dark and evil. And there's descriptions of like Mordor has like farmlands and things like that. I always thought that was interesting, that you can really flesh out like how, despite how evil it is, like maybe it wasn't always so evil, or it didn't have to be such an evil place, but it was populated by like very dark evil forces. And I always think it's interesting that we have this attraction to antagonists, and we have an attraction to dark imagery and things like that. And I think it's because it gives us a sense of contrast, and it also gives us like something we can fight against, or something we can explore to kind of explore our own dark side. So that's why Mordor remains, so captivating to our imagination. That's why people travel as a tourist destination to New Zealand, where they filmed Mordor, the Lord of the Rings films, and that there's like this volcano, and it's this kind of desert, kind of rocky landscape in New Zealand, and it looks a lot like Mordor, and people go out there because they want to try to experience the real Mordor. And we know that in like Afterlife accounts, people recreate fantasy worlds. People turn pop culture into pop reality on that side. And so you better believe that people are creating like nasty, dark, hellish landscapes because it's fun. It captures our imaginations. So these are things people have to reconcile with. And yes, I talk to people all the time who are like, "Oh, that's disgusting. I don't believe in anything that's negative. Nothing that's negative can really exist. Anybody who thinks like this, they're low vibration." It's like, well, wake up, because we all have a dark side. We all have a part of us that I think is attracted to some of the dark side, and there really are bad people. Not just people playing around with the dark, but there are actual legitimately creatures born from darkness and evil. And we see them in this world, like Joseph Mengele, the Nazi scientist. Guy was as evil as it gets. Saddam Hussein's kids, who used to like torture and kill the maids who worked in the palaces. Lots of really bad people in this world. And astrally speaking, they come from somewhere. Yeah, we're all source consciousness, but maybe source consciousness is sometimes a little bit effed up. So those are my thoughts tonight. No, I think I'll have a lot more to talk about this subject in the future, but that's just what came to me right now. If you like this kind of stuff, please hit subscribe. Help keep this channel going, because this is itty bitty channel, and any help with that is appreciated. You can click show more, because I have some stuff in the description if you want to get involved. We have a big Facebook group you can join, a couple of books out, Understanding Life After Death, The Afterlife and Beyond, and I do classes twice a week about life after death and topics like that. So that's about it for tonight's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll talk to you next time. And stay out of the dark planes unless you're just super curious about it. Okay, talk to you next time.